Republicans and Democrats have promised us the world. Medicare for all, no child left behind, equity, safer streets, and police reform, an end to the housing crisis, a more peaceful world, and a sound economy. Government is the barrier to all of these things. If you're sick of the lies, fancy slogans, and broken promises, then join us in the Libertarian Party and help bring a real free market to the U.S. and help set every individual free. LP.org. That's LP.org. Hello, and welcome back to the Liberty Blues Network. I'm Sean Osborne. Please like and subscribe to the podcast if you like what you hear today. Share it with your friends, leave a comment, and all that good stuff. Today on the show, James Wiley is joining me from Colorado. He's running for Colorado Secretary of State. How's it going?
Really good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. So, Secretary of State, who's your opponent over there?
Well, we got a couple of Democrats. They're going through a primary right now. Well, one of them I've sued last year. I sued Amanda Gonzalez. She's the current Jefferson County clerk. And I sued her over a ballot access issue with a school board candidate. And we were able to defeat her relatively handedly in that lawsuit. So it's a great foundation for our relationship and our rivalry. I hope that she wins the primary, but it's looking like Jesse Danielson is raising a lot more money in that primary race. Mm-hmm. And she's a state senator out of Wheat Ridge, Colorado. And she's responsible for many of the election laws that are terrorizing the state of Colorado right now. So looking forward to that rivalry if it ends up being between the two of us.
Yeah, that'll be cool. What kind of laws have they put up over there?
Well, anything from mail-in voting to just recently, they're trying to do email balloting. So you would submit your ballot via email. And the joke I've been making is AI fembots taking over our email accounts and submitting ballots for us. And I think that's one of the risks that we face in elections in general is the role that AI is going to be playing in future elections, more than just the deep fakes and the election content and the memes. It's going to be actually controlling the machines that tabulate the votes. And that's a huge concern of mine. And one reason why we need to get rid of these voting machines in our elections.
Yeah, that looks like a whole lot of bad stuff can come from that. So what office did you run for before? Did I already ask you that before? What did you run?
I ran for Congress in 2024 in CD3 against Lauren Boebert. And ultimately, because of my candidacy, she decided to leave that race and switch districts to CD4 because as a libertarian, I would have spoiled that race for her. And she only had 546 vote advantage in 2022 when she ran. It actually caused an automatic recount because I was within 0.5%. But I polled almost 4% in my race, which would have been more than enough to spoil her chances. And so she ran away from that district and was replaced by Jeff Hurd, which is a very unpopular congressman right now. And so I came this close to spoiling him one more percent, and I would have destroyed his race also. So that's unfortunate. I didn't block him, but there's more things coming down the line for him.
What party is he?
He's a Republican.
He is because I don't know. When I think of Colorado now, I think that it's gone a lot. It's rather blue now, isn't it?
They try to give off that image, though right now, congressionally, it's a 4-4 state. So it's not like Virginia or New England or any of these others that are a really high concentration of blue or redistricting for that purpose, though they are trying to redistrict Colorado to flip three of those districts to blue. I'm not sure if they'll succeed in that effort in general, though Colorado is fairly red outside of the Denver-Boulder area. The legislature has just prepared things and presented things and terrorized the state with all their far left agenda to make it seem a lot more blue than it actually is.
So what made you decide to run as a Republican, not a Libertarian this time?
A couple of different things were playing out towards the end of last year. One of the biggest is related to Tina Peters and her situation. I was hopeful that she would be released from jail and be able to reactivate her campaign from 4 years ago. There's quite a bit of resources still in that account, and she would be able to run for Secretary of State from that position. And much of the Republican and conservative movement in Colorado was looking for her leadership and hoping to be able to see that. But as the deadline came closer and closer, the assembly date itself on April 11th being the deadline, nothing happened on her end, and she was still in prison. So she wasn't able to initiate that candidacy. So I showed up to assembly. I was able to get 72% of the delegates there to support my candidacy and eliminate any potential competitors, even in the space of the primary. Nobody reached the 30% threshold to participate in the primary except for myself. And so I'm going straight to the general election with a full mandate from the Republican Party.
Okay. What's up with her? I don't know if my listeners would have heard about that. Why is she in prison?
No, thanks for asking. Yeah, Tina Peters, she is the clerk and recorder, former clerk and recorder of Mesa County that did the scan of the backup of the hard drives on the Dominion voting machines back in 2021 to keep the records of the 2020 election, which were highly contested. And she did this backup. And after she did that, then the Secretary of State removed her from office unilaterally. And then the district attorney brought all these charges against her. And it seems like a federal conspiracy between the FBI and the Secretary of State's office to really punish her as a clerk and send a message to the other clerks around the state, most of which are Republican clerks, not to investigate the elections, don't perform your duty as far as backing up the records, and to do what you're told and nothing else. And so they made an example out of Tina, gave her 9 years in prison for that, and she's still serving. She's almost 80 years old and still serving time in jail.
Uh-huh. So, I mean, what did they say the crime was then? I mean, just copying it?
There was a couple of people surrounding Mike Lindell at the time who influenced Tina Peters to conduct this operation. A couple of the components of the operation was doing this backup of the machine before and after what's called a trusted build. It's basically a reimaging of the system. And so she did those backups, and those backups are totally legitimate, protected by federal law, all this. But they instructed her to get one of their federal informants, his name is Conan Hayes, to actually go in person using a false identity. So there was an identity theft element in play that she was charged with. And by having this unauthorized individual present for the trusted build, which was the reimaging of the machine, having that person present for that operation essentially sent a signal that was influencing the public officials who did the operation. They wouldn't have done it if they had known the identity of that person. So influencing a public official was the charge, and then the identity theft was the charge, which those are totally unnecessary to the performance of her duty under federal law to maintain the records, which she was not convicted of. And so it was these auxiliary components of the operation that she was influenced to do, when she should not have been, that ultimately resulted in those charges. So I have a lot of questions about what happened. I don't know if we're ever going to get the answers from the FBI or from the district attorney on why those pieces were put in place to trap her, basically. Mm-hmm. I believe she was set up.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about like how the federal government does. You know, they go infiltrate some group or something like that, and then, you know, encourage them to do something, then they go jump in there and act like they saved everybody when they actually started it all or something.
Oftentimes, they commit more of the crimes than they ultimately end up charging people with. But since it was part of their investigation, or they get some kind of immunity out of it, there's never true justice in the situation. That's been the memo, the operating memo for the FBI and the Counterterrorism Task Force and all these other federal agencies which are operating and persecuting the American people.
Mm-hmm. So what do you want to get, what kind of message do you want to get out to the Colorado voters about, you know, what's going on, and like, you know, what's the real message of your campaign?
The key is back to normacy. We've got these elections which are splintered and fractured in all these different manners, and the chain of custody of the ballots is disrupted by the mail-in voting. The security of the tabulation is disrupted by the machine counting. And also, we've got issues with our voter rolls. One quarter of all the voter rolls in the state have questionable identifiers alongside them, whether those people moved out of state or died or something else happened. It's almost impossible to actually remove those people from the voter rolls. I've talked to a lot of different people who said, I keep getting these ballots mailed to me every single election for somebody who I don't know when the last time they actually lived at this address. And they'll contact the clerk, they'll beg the clerk to take them off the voter rolls, to take their address out. And they said, well, until this person contacts us, we can't do anything about it. So we're gonna mail out a form to the address, which they could fill out to say that they no longer live at that address. Well, how are they going to sign that when they no longer live at that address? So it's a complete deadlock of absurdity with that situation where
Uh,
we've got millions of additional voters which should not be on the rolls. My position is scrap the whole thing. If you are alive and breathing and a citizen, show up to the clerk's office and re-register before the next election. That's my position, but I know the clerks probably wouldn't agree with that. And the current Secretary of State is doing everything she can to maintain that excess in the voter rolls. The Libertarian Party of Colorado sued her over that issue years ago alongside Judicial Watch, and that's an ongoing process just to clean up those voter rolls. But she's also got these issues, Jenna Griswold, with mailing out notices to non-citizens, asking them to register to vote, mailing them ballots, allowing them to vote. That shouldn't be allowed. And yet there's no accountability when somebody like Jenna Griswold does it, and yet Tina Peters gets an entirely different standard of justice applied to her.
yeah, I notice people on the left, like progressives and stuff, always say, where's this evidence of voter fraud? But it sounds like there's plenty of it over there because I remember hearing about when they were the Libertarian Party was suing over there in Colorado.
Yeah, and we also sued Jenna Griswold over the BIOS passwords. When her office
Yeah.
published those on the internet, that's gross negligence by her office, and the lack of accountability there was astonishing. The day before the election in 2024, myself and the Libertarian Party, both plaintiffs in that lawsuit, went into court, drugged the Deputy Secretary of State into court to answer for that negligence, and the court threw out the lawsuit as not being a big issue. The security, they said, was not compromised, even though the BIOS passwords for almost every single computer in the elections was published on the internet for Iran, China, Russia, and everybody else to access.
Man, that's crazy. I didn't realize it was tossed out.
Yeah, they tossed out the lawsuit. We went to the Colorado Supreme Court, and same thing there. So no accountability, no hand counts for Colorado as a result of that. And you see, the shocking element is when every other state in the union shifted red in 2024 election, elected Trump, Colorado shifted blue. Colorado was the only one. And yet we did not get the hand count that we demanded after all our BIOS passwords were compromised.
Uh, that's wild. And even though like the rest of Colorado kind of is more conservative, is the Supreme Court there full of Democrats or something?
Yeah, so Jared Polis has been in office. The Libertarian governor, Jared Polis, has been in office for the last 8 years now. And so pretty much all of the Supreme Court has been appointed under his authority. It's all Democrats now.
Okay, yeah, I see. He saw him on Bill Maher one day talking about how he was libertarian leaning. I was like, I saw how you behaved during COVID. I don't think so.
Where's the evidence? Exactly.
Somebody else besmirching the libertarian name out there again. So how's your campaign going? Are you getting much traction over there? And when's the primary that's coming up, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna skip right through the primary, go straight to the general. So I got a couple of month advantage on my opponents,
Oh,
and I
nice.
gotta press that advantage. Pushing hard on fundraising. I've got several different tours around the state scheduled. One I begin on Thursday, going over to the Western Slope, where I'm gonna do 5 or 6 different events. And so yeah, every day is gonna be very busy from now on, making calls, talking to donors, hosting events, and making sure that we get off the ground with a lot of fire. I've got a duty to the the delegates who nominated me at Assembly to follow through and deliver for them. And so I take that duty really seriously, and am excited to win this election. It's definitely winnable. Jenna Griswold has created a terrible legacy, which is essentially on the ballot this term. She's not running for Secretary of State. She's running for Attorney General. I can't believe she's going for another office, the highest law enforcement office in the state too. But the advantage that I have is running against her legacy, and the opponents have to defend that legacy, which all they're going to say is gold standard, everything's good here, machine count is great, mail-in ballots are great. They're going to continue that line of thinking, which is completely disconnected from reality and absurd. And I think most Colorado voters recognize that.
Mm-hmm. How's the press coverage been over there for you?
It's been mixed. I've got a lot of haters, but the haters make me famous, so I'm super grateful for that element for sure. I just had an article come out about how I did not attend the Libertarian Convention. Probably three-quarters of that article was about that one fact, and about one paragraph was dedicated to the convention itself and what took place there. So despite my having been the primary grassroots organizer for Joe Jorgensen's campaign back in 2020, and really promoting her, advancing her, and helping her to spoil Donald Trump's race with her performance, I was not invited to meet with her or participate in that whatsoever. So that was regrettable, but I understand that's the direction that the local party is taking at the moment, and I'm hopeful for a more conservative reversal, that we walk away from the communist ideology that's sank its teeth into the Libertarian Party here.
Yeah, I heard it's the Colorado Libertarian Party is not doing so hot these days. Kind of, again, like you said, leaning towards those left-leaning kind of nonsense.
And it's too bad. The Democrats definitely have a lot of influence into the local party now.
Yeah, me as a libertarian, I don't want to lean left or right. I want to lean towards less government.
Fair enough.
I'm that kind of libertarian. I don't like. I despise the left-right paradigm, man. I don't dig it.
Yeah, I'm a alt-right, far-right extremist in that capacity, but the important thing is libertarian nationalism and the movement behind that concept, and bringing together freedom, but also national identity. And we are collectivists in the sense that we identify as American, but the way we carry that out is a very liberty-focused, freedom-focused approach, much like the founding fathers did when they first developed Americanism. And I think libertarian nationalism is the resurrection of that original Americanism. It was the 13 colonies identifying with each other and separating from the empire. And that is the type of identification and mutual comradeship that we need to inspire among our fellow Americans to come together and honor our nation, honor our legacy, honor our history, honor our founders, and at the same time follow the example that they set out, which is be free. For sure, that's what we need.
Isn't that what Vivek Ramaswamy was talking about?
Yeah, I believe he's the one who coined that term, and I really appreciate it. And then Austin Peterson really took that to the next level. I believe he was our 2016 presidential candidate. Up for nomination. He did not receive the nomination. Gary Johnson did, but he presented this manifesto at our last convention in October of 2025 for the Libertarian Party of Colorado. And that message really resonated with me and kind of inspired me to follow through with not just being an ideologue, not just supporting the philosophy of libertarian nationalism and cheering on for its proponents such as Javier Milei and the leadership in Chile as well, and other nations that are moving in that direction, but to go to the place where the power sits. And this is what he told us, and take the power. And so I find power within the Republican Party, not as much as the Democrats have here, but there is an opportunity to definitely more of an opportunity as a Republican than as a libertarian registered to advance actual libertarian ideology. Take Thomas Massie or Rand Paul, these others, Vivek Ramaswamy. Note, he was not running for the Libertarian nomination. He was running for the Republican nomination, and we can actually use the vehicle of the Republican Party to advance libertarian nationalism. And as I've seen in my own experience at the assembly, people are ready for that message. They're ready for our new brand, a new generation of ideology. Yeah, neocon conservatism doesn't sell for the Republican Party anymore. They want something else. They want something fresh, and they're ready for a whole new generation to come and take over and to lead into the future.
I think when a lot of people hear that term nationalism, they start conflating it with, like, say, white nationalism and things like that. And obviously, Vivek Ramaswamy is not white, so that kind of shoots that down. Um,
Sure.
how do you counter those kind of arguments from, obviously, people on the left are going to say, oh, it's about this and that, and you know uh, the good old days with slavery and this and that kind of stuff that the progressives like to throw out there.
Fair enough. Yeah, the idea behind nationalism is usually it's not an independent thing. As far as an ideology, usually it's paired with something else. So, socialist national socialism, for example, is the Nazi Party was a socialist party. I think that's important to emphasize. Now,
Right.
they did promote a national identity along with that, but the key to how they carried it out beyond just having the identity, which defined the circle of which they found acceptable, they carried it out through socialism.
Mhm.
So I want to take that same national identity, not the German, but the American one, and I want to carry that out through libertarianism, through Rothbardian anarcho-capitalist economics that I think is really important that we educate the public on, but we have to do that in a basis of which they feel associated with, and that's through their national identity. It's like, well, what does it mean to be American? Well, live free, be happy, do what you want, pursuit of happiness, all these things. That is libertarianism. And so we need to combine those two different elements because the method of libertarian government is it is historically too globalist to say remove these borders to allow free trade and these other elements. We actually have a purely libertarian format already established between the United States where we have free trade, we have open borders, and we have that libertarian ideal already manifested. All we need to do is protect that from the communists who are invading across our border or trying to subvert our media or take over our educational institutions. We need to actively resist against those influences and actively support the sovereignty of our country and defend it against these communist infiltrators by any means necessary.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there's a lot of homegrown communists too. I unfortunately have some people I know that, grew up, with socialist and communist kind of mentalities, and they're already here. So, like, it's not just to me. It's not just about people coming into the country. It's about changing exposing the communists for what they are, authoritarians,
Mm.
people who don't like freedom. They want to force this equity, which is really just making us all poor, except for those who are, more, the party leaders, they'll obviously live higher than the rest of us. I get, like Orwell said, some animals are more equal than others.
Yeah, and my position on actual people who identify as communist in this country and put them in a camp or do a student exchange program or screw the student part, but exchange them. I will trade our communists for Cuba's libertarians. And so we can send our communists to them where they want to be in a communist country, let them enjoy that utopia, and then we get to take their freedom-loving people. And so I'd be glad to deport all communists out of this nation. And if they refuse to leave, they need to be segregated from society in camps or something of that form.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind if somebody's a socialist, like, say, the Amish are, in my opinion, socialist, or
They're religious socialists, though.
yeah. So they don't want to use government against us. So I
No.
don't have a I have a I've tried to be better about that, drawing the line between somebody who's a socialist, like in that sense, who don't use, or like a hippie commune. They're not trying to tell me how to live my life.
No.
Just those who want to use the government force against us.
Exactly. And the violence of the state is the weapon of the communist. And so we need to be mindful that by displaying communist intent or communist identity, that is a violation of the non-aggression principle in itself. Anybody who's a revolutionary communist intends violence against every single one of their neighbors. And communists go door to door. They go door to door, and they'll take you out of your home. And if you do not swear allegiance to their God figure, whichever head is the head of the revolution is, they will execute you. And so that is a violation of the non-aggression principle to identify as communist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know how the camp thing goes with how that'll go over with people, because I mean, obviously, we've got a bad habit in this country of putting people in camps like we did with the Japanese and stuff. I know I
It's voluntary. Like, renounce your communism and we'll set you free. So they're there voluntarily.
Yeah. So yeah, and I guess like when it comes to the camps too, like you know, I don't know if people would look at it, because I talked to my communist friend about it, and I was like, why don't you move to another country? He goes, well, I'm free, I have the right to do this, and somehow communists really believe that they are free. That they have the mentality that they're really just free individuals in this system, and they're not. I don't understand the cognitive dissonance in their mind, where they're coming at with that somehow they're free because they're part of this group. The group think really shocks me.
Yeah, they're free until they take over, and then their own government structure begins to oppress them. And so in our society, which isn't communist, they are free. But the moment that they achieve their utopia, then the revolution is complete, and now it's top-down blood, no matter what. So I hope that they do achieve their revolution, but I hope it's very far away from me, and not in the nation of America, wherever it happens.
Yeah, I do believe I have been. I've been a pretty open borders kind of person, but I do agree with the fact that people who don't like the United States and don't like freedom shouldn't be invited in to our system to vote and that kind of thing. Because it does undermine the very principles with which we have prospered compared to other countries who like take Argentina for instance, who
Yeah.
used to be very prosperous, and then they went socialist and they went to the bottom of the barrel really
Mhm.
fucking quick.
I would admit Argentina to the United States. I would admit Alberta to the United States. I would not admit Puerto Rico to the United States. I would not admit the District of Columbia to the United States. Actually, we should spend those off and let them be their own thing. And in my opinion, a little Vatican within the paradise of America, that would be DC at that point. But I think the United States should continue to grow the Union and expand beyond our current borders. And we should admit anybody, I mean that anybody who believes libertarian values, who believes in Americanism. And we do have a legitimate process for people to enter this country taking an oath to our Constitution, an oath I haven't even taken. I'm never having been a public servant. But every new immigrant who processes legitimately into our country takes that oath. And it's abhorrent that we put such a high standard for them and then lower the standard for people who take the illegal route.
Yeah, well, not only that, I mean, you think about how our schools now, I mean, they don't teach the horrors of communism. I mean, I read the Communist Manifesto. Sun Tzu says,
Hmm.
know your enemy and know yourself, and you'll be successful. And the communists straight up say that, that to achieve their goals, they will use despotic measures. I mean, it's in the literature. So I think people really ought to understand that when somebody talks about being a communist, you should understand what they're claiming. And just the audacity of people to say that when communists have killed more people than the Nazis, straight up, that's not even close. To think that people brag about being communists as though that's some sort of good thing. That's wild to me.
Yeah, they should be physically removed from society.
Yeah, I think a lot of people start thinking about McCarthyism and what that did, and
Didn't go far enough.
yeah, communism is a very insidious thing, So, um, I don't know how many people necessarily agree with rounding people up and stuff like that because then that how that ends up being, but that's definitely what the communists will do. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
it's a defensive action.
Uh, yeah. What other kind of messages you want to send out there to the voters besides hating the hell out of communists as you should?
I don't know if the voters need to hear that. That's for my libertarian buddies. But the issues with our elections, I think that's the main focus that I'm promoting Secretary of State office. 80% of what I do is in that space. And I think it's important that we recognize the influence of AI is going to be taking over every election from here on out. And the hardware is already in place. It's just the AI software, which now with Windows 11, the latest version, which is installed on the latest versions of the mini voting systems, now Liberty Vote hardware, that is AI developed. AI did influence the development of Windows 11. Microsoft pays bonuses to its employees for the percentage of their code that comes out of AI. Most tech companies do these days because they think it increases efficiency. Well, you're allowing this creature to determine the software on which our elections are going to be run in the future. And so it's a matter of when do they take over. And might not be as dramatic as, say, Terminator with the nuclear missiles flying and the chain link fence and the skeleton and all the fire. But why not? Why wouldn't it be that dramatic when it's the elections which determine who controls the nuclear codes? How close were we to World War III nuclear war under Biden with Russia? We were flirting with that every other weekend, it felt like, for several years. And I don't know how we managed to avoid that, but that won't be avoidable in the future when AI determines that the extermination of humanity is the best thing for peace, which is a logical conclusion in many senses. So we've got that main risk. Also, of course, business, that's a big focus. Colorado has lost 30,000 businesses in the last year, who are small businesses shutting down, big companies leaving the state just yesterday. We heard that Remax, who has its headquarters in Denver, is leaving. Palantir used to have its headquarters. Both went to Florida. So companies are fleeing the state and going other directions, and the unions are hurting. Small businesses is hurting. Big business is hurting, though we don't care about them as much. It's the first two, small business and unions, mom and pop shops that are really, really struggling, and the union jobs are drying up as well. So we need to bring back business in this state, reinvigorate that, make it easier to start companies, make it easier to keep your companies going. In my office, I'm going to lower fees as much as possible to ease that process and support the development of new businesses in this state.
Colorado should learn from California, man. We've ran just about everybody out of the state.
Well, you ran them all here, and they're voting the same way. So thank you.
Yeah, I hear they're doing that in Texas too.
Yeah, it's terrible, but it's not game over yet. And hopefully, through the federal influence, the SAVE Act, getting that passed, if Thune will get off his ass and take some action, that'd be great. But we have a chance this election to actually push back against the communist agenda, which is taking place here. And if you look at what the last 6 or more years have really looked like for the country, and you recognize the manifesto, have read it like you have, you understand that this is play by play. This isn't. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody except those who don't understand communism.
The one thing I would say about the liberty movement is, I mean, I know that every party has their arguments and stuff, but the liberty movement has a lot of people arguing and fighting with each other over. Really, to me, a lot of it's kind of pointless. When you got communists, they refer to each other as comrade, and they really walk in lockstep with each other, which I don't think is a good thing. You want people who think for themselves. But I think liberty-minded people need to be a little better about not attacking each other for having slightly different opinions. Because, I mean, I know some people jump all over other people's asses just because they're not, their version of the border security is a little bit different than somebody else, and they start, calling people racist and, using those terms. And, as a member of the Mises caucus, that was why we removed that from the libertarian what do you call it, the platform. And
Yes.
these words bigot and stuff like that, they don't really mean anything anymore. It's thought crime. You accuse somebody of being a bigot, doesn't mean that their thoughts are really bigoted. It just means you don't like them, and you don't like the way they say things, and it makes you feel uncomfortable. Because me as a libertarian, I don't, especially as a blind guy, I don't give a shit what you look like. Does this feel like freedom, right? I
Yeah.
actually had somebody accuse me of being racist. I said, I can't even see what you look like.
Do you not see colors, sir?
Yeah. It's like, oh my God, how just the crazy shit that comes out of people's minds when they disagree with somebody. I mean, it's like you can't. Too many people in the liberty movement, I feel, can't accept somebody's ideas being different. That they think that they're so right. I mean, I believe what I believe, but I don't have to demonize somebody else for having a slightly different opinion. I believe they can have that opinion in good faith, just as long as they're not trying to get government to mess with me. Me, I guess I came to libertarianism from the left. I was a Union Democrat growing up in that kind of family, and a musician. So I didn't. I'm an old metalhead. I had the people on the right and Christians outside of my concerts screaming, telling we were going to hell, and all this kind of stuff. So I was never terribly fond of people who did that, and then the Democrats started with censorship, and that's what sent me to the Libertarian Party with the PMRC, Gore running for office, and so I mean I see both sides of libertarianism. If you're more of a left leaning person or right leaning person, you can live your life however you want. Just leave me the hell alone and leave government. Don't encourage government in my life. That's always been my take, and it just seems like there's a lot of infighting that really kind of sinks the ship before it even gets out of port.
Yeah, there is a certain dynamic that's taken place in the Libertarian Party, which a lot of people, and it's disguised for this purpose, a lot of people see it as organic or a natural condition. Actually, it's intentional, it's influenced. There are foreign entities and collaboration with nationals here in the country, which are pushing to make the Libertarian Party more communist and pushing to make it more leftist. And so, where libertarianism is a naturally conservative philosophy, now there is this infighting and battle, which causes the Libertarian Party not to play its natural role. All of politics is coalition building, all of it. And who can build the 51% coalition? So, for example, in 2016, Trump managed to build that coalition. In 2020, that coalition fell apart, in part because the libertarians did not support him. I voted for Joe Jorgensen, and Joe Jorgensen spoiled that race. In 2024, Trump pulled together that coalition. He got Bobby Kennedy on board, a huge player here in Colorado politics, and the Libertarian Party here supported him until we were brought into Trump's coalition with Bobby. And the Libertarians overwhelmingly voted for Trump and overwhelmingly didn't vote for their own candidate. And you also had, of course, the MAGA movement as a whole, combining MAHA, combining dark MAGA with Elon Musk. And so there was a beautiful coalition that formed in 2024. But the issue with the Libertarian Party is it's not able to be conscious and self-aware of its role in coalition building. That we could join the left if we wanted to. We could join the Democrat Party, excuse me, not the left, but the Democrat Party if we were afraid of tyranny from a Republican candidate. And same on the other side, we should be prepared to support the Republican. So we really are the puppet masters. The Libertarian Party is. I guess I'm not libertarian anymore, but philosophically, yes. We are the puppet masters if we're self-aware enough to play that role. Otherwise, we're just a belligerent drunk guy who steps in front of one car and causes an accident, or steps in front of the other car and causes an accident, rather than intelligently assisting in the race to ensure the better one wins. And this time around, Trump freed Ross. He promoted Kennedy, a libertarian, into his cabinet. And so Libertarian Party, by being self-aware this one time in its entire lifetime, but for the first time, was able to actually accomplish advancements for liberty. And we need to be very aware, if we slide away from that position, what the consequences are going to be in 2028.
Yeah, that was one of the things I really loved about what Angela did as chair of the Libertarian Party is she looked at libertarians as not just the party, but the entire liberty movement as a voting bloc. And there were some who were, like you said, are more right leaning or left leaning, and they could easily reach out and work with people to say, hey, if you want to get our vote, you need to, do these policies. Like, so if you're left leaning, okay, I want some criminal justice reform. I'd like you to be more anti-war or something like that. But the left's completely lost it on anti-war, and their criminal justice reform has more to do with calling people out for their privilege than it does doing anything of any meaning, if you ask me.
Yeah, they're engaged in social issues, cultural issues, things that aren't really the concern of the government and the libertarian philosophy, or the concern of our economy in trying to develop a better and more free society. So, for example, the Republicans in the state of Colorado lost power over the gay issue. And they were running anti-gay bills. They were trying to enshrine marriage between a man and a woman in the Constitution and doing all these things and engaging the left where the left is strongest.
Right.
And so by doing that, the Republicans lost control. They lost control of the state entirely. Now what we're seeing is division on the gay issue on the other side, where Gays Against Groomers is building a lot of traction here in Colorado. We've got candidates who have been a part of that now running for office, and they're splintering that faction, which was so united in 2005 when that coalition first came together, and we're like, we're gonna bring together the union people and the coal workers and the environmentalists and everybody else, and we're gonna bring them all on the same page for the sake of advancing gay rights. And then they succeeded. They created the 51% coalition majority. They conquered, and they got a supermajority after that because the Republicans kept doubling down. And for example, the Republican Party is pushing for the right to life in the state of Colorado, where abortion is now a part of our Constitution. And those are issues you're just not going to win on. You're not going to be able to appeal to the rational sensibilities. And I'm pro-life. I don't agree with abortion, but I'm not going to make that my campaign because, well, I owe it to my delegates that is simply to win, and that's not going to be how I'm going to win. So
Yeah.
I wish conservatives in general would use some level of political intellect and strategy to move away from those losing positions and build that 51 coalition, no matter what it takes.
Yeah. That's one thing I recently wrote an article about. I don't want as a libertarian, I don't want the party to fly people's freak flag. You know what I mean? The party should be anti-government, anti-force. That's it. It shouldn't
Mhm.
be. I smoke more weed than nine people. And I don't want the party just to be the pro-weed party. I want it to be the government can't tell me I can't smoke weed party. Or things like
Yeah.
that. I don't need it to go out. I don't need everybody to go out and fly a 420 flag or a pride flag for some people's things. I don't think that's the place of the party to engage in people's. Every individual is different. The party can't represent everybody if it's too busy trying to represent these people's individual pet projects or the things that mean the most to them. That's what
Yeah,
the candidate.
pro sex work and all these other
Yeah, yeah,
things. It's just not important. It's not a
yeah.
priority, and we're not going to grow our coalition by making
No,
that a priority.
no. I believe somebody wants to work, sell their body. That's their business. But I surely don't think that's a selling point for my point of views. So I don't feel the need to wave that freak flag.
I wish more people had your sensibility.
Yeah, I know. It sounds great, but I'm sure somebody thinks I'm a terrible human being for saying that. Though there's somebody in the movement that will hate me for that. So
Well, the 0.001% of sex workers will
yeah,
hate you for that. So I'm sorry you lost their support, Sean.
I know it's sad, isn't it? uh, so what other kind of stuff would you like to talk to the voters about? Anything else going on in Colorado you'd like to talk about or anything before we start to wrap up or anything?
Yeah, let me speak to a broader issue that is definitely affecting Colorado, but it's nationwide. 17 states in the union use what's called semi-open primaries, which libertarians don't benefit or from this. Actually, they are excluded from the harm that it creates. In our state, at least, unaffiliated voters can't participate in the Libertarian primary. And we actually do have a primary taking place. Two candidates are running for Secretary of State here in Colorado under the Libertarian banner. So we'll have ballots mailed out to them all. And I don't agree with that, but whatever. and the major parties, however, do participate in the semi-open primary where every single unaffiliated voter, which is now 53% of registered voters, get to pick which primary they participate in. And so I didn't really care about this at all until January 1st when I was a registered Republican and moving into this primary. I skipped the primary. I played my cards right to where it's not going to be an issue affecting me, but it affects many other candidates in the state of Colorado, where I did weighted linear regressional analysis, weighted least squares on various races in 2022 and 2024, and found that if you remove the unaffiliated voters from the elections, the Republican outcome changes. And actually, in a couple of Democrat primaries, also the outcome changes. And so we're having violations of the right to assemble, First Amendment rights, as well as 14th Amendment equal protections, and some other elements in the Colorado Constitution specifically that are being violated by these open primaries. And so my hope is that for the sake of the union, for the sake of these other 17 states, that Colorado can actually have some action to close those primaries and prevent the infiltration by unaffiliated voters, which I need to be mindful of the fact that I need all of their votes to win. But at this point, if my campaign suffers as a result of doing what's the best thing for the state of Colorado by closing the primaries and upholding constitutional rights, I think that's a worthy sacrifice. So that's a little bit of a side quest I have going on right here, but I'm hopeful for a positive outcome. And one of the issues is that it creates this perverse incentive, this structural incentive to not affiliate. Now, when you look at the Bill of Rights, the right to assemble is protected. The right to not assemble is, I guess, in there as well, but it's not explicitly mentioned. And that's because the founders, when they put together the Bill of Rights, were writing a recipe for liberty. Get together with the boys, say whatever you want, get the guns and be free. And that's the method. Whether you're a union and you're fighting in Ludlow against the state militia and the Rockefellers to be able to be paid fairly in the coal mines, or if you're the founding fathers trying to resist the empire, you get together with the boys, you say what you want, and you get the guns. Now, that it's more than just a right at that point. When you're experiencing tyranny, you have a duty to overthrow your oppressive government, per the Constitution also. So you have a duty to assemble, get together with the boys, say what you want, and get the guns. So this is a duty that unaffiliated voters are neglecting because they cast their political will to the wind rather than concentrating it into a vehicle, a political party, an apparatus, which can actually achieve results. And so I'm not saying register Republican. I'm not saying register Democrat. I'm saying register something. Be the formerly unaffiliated voter party. Make that a new party. Join the Libertarian Party, Green Party, Constitutional Party, Forward Party. Don't care. Be a part of something that is a vehicle for the concentration of your political will to achieve actual change and express power. Because if you don't express power, then you're just hot air.
Yeah, time out year after year, we see that over 70% of Americans want more choices, and the primaries just seem like it railroads us into the system we're in. Like here in California, it's the worst. We have our primaries, and only the top two make it
a jungle
in November. So we have oftentimes Democrat versus Democrat, and that's a way straight to the bottom. I don't care if it's Republican versus Republican. We need more choices, and I think that's really the only way to get this is for people to actually, like you said, to affiliate with something and stop voting against things. Some people voted for Trump because they just were so scared of Harris, or people voted for Harris just because they were scared of Trump. It seems like nobody's voting for anything. They're voting against things that their fears. as opposed to actually anything that has any real world, reality.
The field is fertile as well. The Republicans are old. The Democrats are old. Those parties are easily captured by a motivated core. And we should be influencing and infiltrating and taking over these parties, become a precinct captain, become a county chair, run for office under one of these banners, take over the system because there's no guardians left. There's nothing to resist you. I got 72% and I've been a Republican for a couple of months now. So it's easy to take over. We have a duty to take over because that's where the power exists and that's where it rests. And for all my libertarian friends out there, I know donating to political causes isn't a major priority. But this is a campaign, this libertarian nationalist campaign I'm bringing is actually going to advance the cause of liberty and the Libertarian Party by proxy and advance our ideology into the mainstream where it belongs so it can take over the conversation as well. So please donate redflameliberty.com.
Yeah, I think obviously every state's a little bit different. I think it's probably a little different for you there. I think running for as a Republican here in Los Angeles would be a death nail.
No, but you should join the Democrat Party. You should take over. You're a union raised. You can speak that language, my brother. Just infiltrate and express your power.
Yeah, the thought has crossed my mind here and there, but I don't know. I see how the left behaves, and then people in the Democrat Party, man, they would just cannibalize me.
Well, you could be a far right Democrat.
Yeah. So you mentioned where people could donate at. Where can they find you on social media or anything?
Yeah, you can find me on X, Red Flame Liberty, or you could find me on Facebook and Instagram at Red Flame of Liberty.
All right. And can you think of anything that we didn't talk about? Anything else that you'd like to get out there before we wrap it up?
Stay free, my friends.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. And as it gets a little closer to November, I'd like to have you come back on and see what, especially once you know who your opponent is, and let us know how it's going and see how the battle's mounting up.
Yes, sir. Thanks for your time, Sean. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on the show. And thanks to everybody out there for listening to Liberty Blues. Like I said at the beginning, please subscribe, like, share the podcast, leave a comment. All that stuff helps. You can follow me on X at Mad Sean Osborne. YouTube, the podcast is on Sean Osborne. You can see it at Mad Sean Osborne as well. It links to my music as well. My latest album is Free People. You can hear that wherever you stream music. It's fun folk music, traditional American folk music. Think of Woody Guthrie minus the communism. And, share the Liberty Blues wherever you can. It helps spread the message of liberty. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Liberty Blues.